The morning over the Eastern Front began with an unsettling calm, the kind of silence that only exists before the storm. The cold air clung to the earth like a shroud, thick with frost and the lingering smoke of artillery strikes that had pounded the land for weeks. The sky was gray and heavy, its light dimmed by a haze of ash. Across the shattered landscape, the remnants of trees stood like skeletal sentinels, silent witnesses to the endless destruction. Every inch of ground bore the scars of war, trenches torn open, craters filled with frozen mud, and the twisted wreckage of vehicles half buried in the dirt. It was through this lifeless expanse that a single Ukrainian soldier moved, slow, cautious, and alone. He had been part of a small reconnaissance team sent to track enemy movement along the tree line, but somewhere during the night, the mission had gone horribly wrong. Radio contact had been lost. The last thing he heard before the static took over was a burst of gunfire, the sound of men shouting, and then silence. Now, he was all that remained. His uniform was soaked, his hands numb from the cold, and his breath came out in small, visible clouds. But his eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the landscape constantly. He had learned to read the ground, to feel danger before it revealed itself. Still, even the most experienced soldier can't see what waits just beyond the fog. Then he heard it, faint but unmistakable. Voices, Russian voices. Somewhere ahead, inside a narrow trench that cut across the field like a wound in the earth, 6 Russian soldiers were waiting. They had spotted movement earlier that morning, a shadow passing through the mist, and now they lay in wait with their rifles trained, confident that whoever approached wouldn't escape. 6 against 1. They whispered quietly, steadying their breathing, their hands ready on the triggers. The Ukrainian was walking straight into a trap, and he didn't even know it. He crept closer, moving low and silent, his rifle held close. The only sounds were the crunch of frozen mud under his boots and the distant creak of burned trees swaying in the wind. The Russians waited, their leader signaling for patience. Every second stretched longer than the last. The Ukrainian paused, scanning the tree line. Something didn't feel right. The silence was too complete, the air too still. Then it happened. "Wait for it," one of the Russians hissed. A split second later, the air exploded with gunfire. Bullets tore through the trees, sending bark and dirt flying. The Ukrainian threw himself to the ground, rolling behind a fallen log as the earth erupted around him. The Russians fired in bursts, thinking they had caught their target completely off guard. But they were wrong. They had fired too early, and the Ukrainian was still alive. He pressed himself into the mud, waiting for the firing to stop, then swung his rifle around and returned fire with sharp, precise bursts. His movements were fast, almost mechanical, every shot measured, every decision deliberate. He wasn't panicking, he was thinking. 2 Russians ducked behind their trench walls, cursing as bullets struck just above their heads. Another fired wildly, trying to suppress him, but the Ukrainian had already moved, sliding into a new position without giving away his location. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Grenades exploded, shaking the earth. The Russian soldiers shouted orders, trying to coordinate. "Flank him!" one yelled. But as 2 of them moved out of cover, the Ukrainian saw his chance. He squeezed the trigger, once, twice, and both men fell before they even knew what hit them. The others froze, realizing the situation had shifted. The man they thought was prey was now hunting them. Fear began to creep into their voices, their confidence draining away. Then, another grenade rolled toward the Ukrainian's position. Instinct took over. He grabbed it and threw it back before it could detonate. The explosion rocked the trench, sending debris flying. Using the smoke as cover, he advanced quickly, rifle steady, firing as he moved. Another Russian went down, hit in the chest. The remaining two scrambled deeper into the trench, their nerves shattered. The Ukrainian paused, reloading, mud streaking his face. He was breathing hard, but he wasn't done yet. He could hear them whispering, trying to regroup, to set up one last line of defense. He reached for a smoke grenade, pulled the pin, and tossed it ahead. Instantly, the trench filled with thick gray fog, cutting off visibility. The Russians fired blindly into the smoke, their gunfire erratic. But the Ukrainian had already vanished. He had slipped around through a collapsed section of trench, moving silently behind them. The first Russian never saw him. A single burst dropped him instantly. The second turned, eyes wide with terror, but it was too late. Another short burst ended it. The last soldier tried to flee, stumbling through the mud, shouting in panic, but the Ukrainian took one final steady shot. The echo of that gunfire was the only sound left. Then, the battlefield went still again. The smoke drifted slowly upward. The Ukrainian soldier lowered his weapon, his breath heavy and uneven. Around him, 6 bodies lay scattered in the trench, the same 6 who had thought they would be his end. He looked down at his hands, trembling from adrenaline, then at the horizon. The war stretched on in every direction. But for this moment, in this one frozen place, he had survived. He found a damaged Russian radio lying in the mud, its casing cracked from shrapnel. He turned the dial, listening to the static, hoping for a signal. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, faintly, a voice came through. "Alpha Team, do you copy?" His throat was dry, his voice low but steady. "This is Bravo 1, he said. "I'm alive. Sector secure." The reply came instantly. "Hold position. Reinforcements en route." He closed his eyes, leaning back against the trench wall, letting out a long breath. He had no ammunition left, no strength to move, but he had done what few could. He had survived the impossible. Hours later, Ukrainian reinforcements arrived. They found him sitting quietly beside the trench, rifle across his lap, surrounded by the evidence of what had happened. The story spread quickly through military channels. 1 soldier, 6 enemies, and a fight that defied all odds. When journalists later asked him why he hadn't run, his answer was simple and raw. "If I ran, they'd take the trench. And if they took it, they'd reach my friends." Those words spread across social media, across units, across the world. Soldiers whispered them like a reminder of what the war had become. Not grand victories, but small moments of defiance in the face of death. Military analysts reviewed drone footage of the battle and confirmed the account. One man had held off an ambush designed to annihilate him. His actions delayed a Russian advance long enough for reinforcements to fortify the line, a moment that changed the course of a single brutal day. But to the man himself, it didn't feel like heroism. It felt like survival. He carried no pride, no glory, only the knowledge that he was still breathing, while others were not. As he walked away from that trench, His boots sinking into the frozen mud, he looked over his shoulder once more. The battlefield was silent again, the kind of silence that only follows destruction. Smoke curled into the gray sky, carrying with it the last traces of the fight. There was no victory here, only endurance. And in a war like this, endurance is everything. Days turned into weeks, and he returned to the front again and again, each time facing new ambushes, new losses, new ghosts. But the memory of that morning never left him. It was a reminder that even in the darkest corners of war, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to keep moving forward, to hold the line when no one else can, to fight even when survival seems impossible. His story became a quiet legend, not because of fame or medals, but because it was true. Somewhere in the wreckage of eastern Ukraine, amid the mud and the smoke, a single trench still bears the marks of that battle, the place where one man stood against six and refused to fall. It is a story that will live far beyond the war itself, a story of instinct, resilience, and the raw power of human will under fire. This was not just a battle, it was a test of spirit, of determination, of what it truly means to survive when the world seems to have ended around you. This is the story of one man, one trench, one impossible fight, presented by Delta History. If you were moved by this story, by the courage, the sacrifice, and the untold moments that shape modern warfare, then make sure to follow and subscribe to Delta History for more real, cinematic stories from the front lines. Here, history isn't just told, it's lived, one battle, one heartbeat, and one soldier at a time.